Welcome back for another preview video. Excited today to present to you the preview video and my first impressions from my campaign narrative game, full of theme, tactical choices, but very accessible and very easy to throw on the table and jump right into it, which is called The Cats of Mont, Michel. This is a game from Raybox Games. It's a company, if you don't heard of them so far, which produce really nice, interesting tactical games with a campaign mission book, which I really love. One of the greatest hits is Escape from Stalingrad Z, the great game. This is a game that uses a similar system, but it's more accessible. It's more, I should say, family friendly also, or I don't know, easy to get behind. It has more straightforward gameplay, but it has a lot of theme, it has a lot of story, it has a lot of narrative options, and it also has nice tactical decisions and a lot of things to discover. Now, the game uses this campaign mission book, which you flip. You have the rules on one side and you just dive directly into the story and into the decisions and into the options you need to take. It has an action point driven system where you spend action points to move around to trying to complete different objectives depending on the scenario. Now, scenario from scenario is very different, and even though my demo copy only included three scenario, the three first scenario, which they teach you the rules on how to move, how to attack, and how to complete objectives and move around and make decisions and level up, of course. Once you progress through the campaign, you'll be able to decide based on the outcome of your scenario and your current mission to make either side quests or branch off and do different things, and then go to the next scenario and move forward towards the end of the story. Now, the story itself puts the heroes into the shoes of hero cats, which are trying to find out what's going on and trying to throw out all these, let's say, invaders of roaches and vicious rats and the cardinal that are coming their way, and they're trying to find out what's going on and why this increased hostility around their area. And all this is really unfolding very nicely, at least from the first three scenarios. The game is very easy to set up. You can, if you have any experience with Escape from Stalingrad Z, you can either have tokens or standees or even minis, which I'm going to add a link in the description of the video, so you're going to be able to find out more about the campaign once it launches and the options it offers. But above all, this game is very compact. It is it could be one huge book, but they optimize to have compact boxes that are portable, and I really like that. Full of story, full of tactical options and decisions, and a ton of missions. I mean, if you go and check out Escape from Stalingrad Z, you see how many scenarios there are packed in a thick book with all the scenario and options. And now you can have this in a different universe with the Cats of Mont Église, which is a very different game in terms of theme and universe and setting from Escape from Stalingrad Z. It is more easy to play with a mixed group of, I don't know, gamers and not gamers, maybe younger children, or a mix of experienced gamers and others. But it offers, I should say, a very interesting gameplay setting, which I've seen in the previous game, with less details or things to have to go and check, or and find out if I'm doing this correctly, if I'm playing the game with all the rules that it's intended to play. This game has a lot of rules, a lot of tactical options, a lot of decisions to make on how to play the scenario, how you evade the enemies, how you kill the enemies, how you progress and set your objectives to activate them and then move forward and escape from this scene and go to the next scene. But it does it effortlessly, I should say, more easily than other games of this level would do. So it's really geared towards enjoying the story, having fun with the tactical options of eliminating your enemies and moving forward, and discovering the story, which is really nice, the entries in the rulebook and how the story unfolds. So join me at the table. I'll show you how the game plays. I will explain all the rules in detail. I'm going to add the links in the description for quick jump navigation, so you can go directly to different sections of the rules. And then I'm going to come back at the end of this video for a final wrap-up about my first impressions from the game and why I think it's a nice game if you like this adventure, dungeon crawling, tactical style games with this theme and setting, that you should always be packing on your backpack and enjoying it along the way. So join me and let's see how the game plays first of all. Welcome to the cats of Mont, Michel. A dark time has fallen on the fabled place, and those who inhabit it. Heroes will rise. The Cats of Mont Saint-Michel is a miniature solo cooperative campaign game set in the historical island monastery of Saint-Michel during the French Revolution. The game plays out over a series of linked scenarios forming a campaign and an ongoing story, and each previous scenario in the campaign affects the start of the next one. As you play each scenario, your hero will come closer to reaching their ultimate goal of ridding the abbey of the villainous rats and their brethren. Along the way, they will need to defeat swarms of cockroaches, warrior rats, and other foul beings. They will also gain experience and unlock unique skills. The game needs several sittings to complete, but you can easily save your progress between sessions. I'm going to cover the rules on how you play the game without making any spoilers, and give you an information about how you can play the game, the rules and how it flows, and then you'll come back to this at the end of this video for my final wrap-up and my impression after playing the first 3 scenarios included in the game. You have to play the game as you read through the text, and the first 3 scenarios are meant to be played thoroughly and understood because they introduce the basic rules of the game to the players. If you fail the objective, or if you're unsatisfied with the results, you can freely plan to play any of the scenarios again. When you proceed beyond the first few scenarios, you will start to have choices as to which scenario you would like to play next. These decisions, the path you choose, can change events in a narrative story campaign. You hear the gnawing of wood and shuffling of feet below. Time to figure out how far your enemies have come. So let's start with the first scenario right away. First of all, let's familiarize ourselves with what's included inside the box. Again, keep in mind that this is a prototype, so it has not all the components of the game, but it will give you a good idea on the basic components and how the game flows. So, what's inside the box? First of all, we have the adventure book, which is a book like the one you see here, which has a story, and as you go through the scenarios, you have the special situation for the scenario that you play, and you have the tactical map where our cats are moving around trying to fulfill their objective and exit and proceed to the next scenario and also make choices. They're going to be fighting various cockroaches and rats and different type of foul enemies, trying to fulfill the different objectives. This demo comes with 3 scenarios, so it's going to progress the story for a bit and teach you essentially the basic moving, attacking and pursuing things in the game. In between scenarios you will be moving and visiting the Tavern, du Pelican de Mer, and doing various things there, and throughout the course of the campaign you will be unlocking the story, making choices and progressing down the road. Now, before doing anything else, let's familiarize ourselves with the components of the game. I'm just going to for the moment leave it here and tell you that this is the adventure book, okay, where we have the different scenarios and their playthrough. We have the rule book, which is not included here, with all the rules and all the entries as well for the story. We have 9 character sheets which look like that. They have a portrait, as you can see. They have the stats for our heroes. They have their health marker. They have 2 slots, one for weapon and one for armor. Also there is 6 max cards below, as you can see. And here on the right they will be unlocking special skills specific only to the nature of their heroes and their unique abilities. The game comes with 81 skill cards for the total of 9 different heroes. It has 108 loot cards. They look like that. In the loot deck, which is going to be different from scenarios to scenarios, so you'll have to pre-construct it based on the scenario instructions. You can find gold coin, you can find events, you can find different equipment like weapons that you can use, health potions, yeah, or different armor that you can equip yourself with so that you can be better prepared for your adventures. Now, on top of that, you'll find various markers. There is the round marker, first of all, which goes typically on a scenario at the start of this track, and as you play through the rounds it progresses. When it reaches an S, as you'll see later, we have spawn. It could be S, S1, S2, etc. until the rooster wakes everybody and the scenario finishes, hopefully in a positive way for the heroes. You have various tokens. You have stand tokens, which are these tokens here. You can inflict stun to the enemies. You have vulnerable tokens. If you push yourself too much, you may be vulnerable to attacks, so you have modifiers. You have various wound mark tokens like this, and you have depleted tokens like this. Also, you have various other tokens, like for example loot tokens, which have this icon, and they're going to be placed on the specific location squares on the scenario. You can have, I don't know, toxic tokens, toxic stench like this, or you can have objective tokens like this, which will do different things in the game. Now, generally the game comes with 12-sided dice, which look like that. It has also, in addition, if I remember correctly from the setup of Escape from Stalingrad Z, you can either get a version where you have the rulebook and the adventure book and tokens. So instead of having standees or minis, you just have tokens, which are very, very playable, and it's also very portable. Okay. You can also have let's say an enhanced version. I'm thinking the same is going to be for this campaign, but you have to follow the link for the description in the video and find out more during crowdfunding, where you're going to have specific standees which you can use, and I'm sure they're going to have also minis, but you have to follow the campaign to find out more about that. In any case, you see the blue tokens or standees here. These are the heroes. These are our cats and their story that we're going to play. We have different colored orange standees or tokens, which stand for the rats, and we have the yellow ones, which again are enemies, and they stand for the roaches. The roaches move different and attack different, and they stack. This is the only enemy unit that they stack on top of each other. Okay, the other ones cannot stack. And everything else which you might find, there are like plastic bases for the standees, and depending on the version you'll take, you might either have tokens, standees, or both of them, or even miniatures. So these are the basic components of the game, and everything you need to know on what is going to be included. At least there are going to be more cards, more things. You have to follow the campaign to find out more. So let's move forward. Now let's see the core concepts of the game. First, we'll cover the core concepts that you'll need to know before you set up and play the first scenario. Core concepts are common terms that are frequently referred through the rules, and they are included so that they get players right into play, and they give you some basic understanding. Again, gradually through the first 3 scenarios, you're going to be introduced slowly but steadily into the core gameplay and the core rules, and this will be done by playing the first 3 scenarios and jumping right into the campaign. Now let's see first adjacency. Many rules and cuts of Mont and Michel use the term adjacent. This term specifically refers to orthogonal adjacency, except where it's explicitly stated diagonally adjacently. So for example, let's say a vermin is adjacent to a hero if it is one of the 4 squares to the immediate left, right, front, or behind the hero. So let's see, we have Leon here, so this this square here is adjacent, the square to the right is adjacent, the square to the left is adjacent, and the square to the back of Leon is adjacent. Okay, so keep in mind cardinal direction for adjacency. Conflict of rules. If there is ever a contradiction of rules between the rules that they are described in the rulebook and the scenario book, of course the scenario book rules take precedence. The dice of the game. As I mentioned, we have 2 dice which are 12-sided. Players are using a 12-sided dice, d12, and it may be required to roll 1 or more dice to resolve an action. The number of dice required for a roll is abbreviated as x d12, where x represents the number of 12-sided dice that need to be rolled. The result of each die is read separately and resolved, depending if it is an event, if it is an attack, or anything else. Now, the figures. When on a scenario map, whatever is used to present the cat, heroes, or vermin army is referred to a figure, whether it's a marker, a standee, or a miniature. Okay, so whether you have, let's say, Leon as a marker or Leon as a figure, or even if you have it as a standee. This demo copy didn't have didn't have miniatures, but I'm sure they're going to be offered and they're going to be looking great. Any of those are referred to for the rules as figures. The same goes for the enemies. Now, the game structure. In the Cats of Mont and Michel, you will alternate between playing a scenario and visiting the Tavern. In the Tavern stage, you will perform a little housekeeping and your heroes might get the chance to recuperate. An interesting concept for the game are the squares on the map. As you look at the map, you can see that there are small squares outlined in a black line, and those small squares are grouped into 4, creating big squares outlined in solid black line. So for example, Leon is sitting in one of those squares. He's sitting in one small. Let me remove the let me just place the standee so not to confuse anyone. So you see that he's sitting in one small square, and this square is part of a bigger square of 4 2x2 squares, which are outlined in a more expressed, thicker square, so a black solid line. So this is a big square and it has 4. This is another big square and has 4, and this is important because, as you'll see, we have movement of our heroes, our cats, which can be done in different ways, in need of different action points to be spent, and they're going to be using this format. Now, the Vermin Army. The Vermin Army is made up of cockroaches. Let me go over there. The cockroaches are the yellow ones, whether you have again a marker or a standee or a miniature. You also have rats with the purple, again, markers or standees. You can also have bosses, and whatever you may have, either rats, tokens or standees or minis, they are referred to with the keyword vermin. It refers to all of these figures. Now, let's see what happens for the tied for closest. It could be a case where you need to move, let's say, an enemy. Okay, let's say we have this enemy here sitting there, and you have this hero here and maybe that hero there. Okay, in this case, anytime there is a tie in the game for the closest, of course you need to count spaces. So the enemy has 1, 2 distance small squares for Leon, or 1, 2, 3 small squares for the for Guy, the second hero. But let's say for the sake of example, they have equal distance. Okay, that means, and we'll explain the movement later, that if you have the tie for the closest, the players decide which direction, for example, the enemy is going to move towards to. Also, we have the cat character sheet, so let's have an overview of how this works, moving into our hero personal board. Cat character sheet. We have this general format over here, where you have distinct areas. For example, you have here at the top, you have the health track. Track your health here, and every time you take a wound, you reduce your life total by 1. So you can all have a maximum of 9 health, but each time you're taking a wound, you're progressing this marker down towards 0. At the start of a campaign, you have 9 health, and you'll need to place, during start of the campaign, the health marker over there. You also have the hero name and image over here, and the rulebook has a section for each of the heroes with their starting equipment, also with their background story, and give you a bit of a theme and more content to what's going on with our heroes. Then you have this area beneath the name, so this hero is called Guy, and beneath there is this area here, which has the stats for when attacking with hard weapons, and you use the stats for the attack. Then you also have this area here, which you have 2 slots. You have the weapon slot on the left, where you're going to be placing weapons, and you equip weapon cards there under your hero card, and you can have up to 2 one-handed weapons can be placed there. You can see if it's 100 by the paw numbers. Here's 1, could be 2. You have the loot slot beneath. You can have a maximum of 6 loot cards that you can store over there. And you have your armor slot here, where you can equip armor cards, and you can only have 1 armor card placed on this slot. On the right, this area, you have a slot for your skill cards. You place the skill cards your cat has earned here, and you can use them for the upcoming scenarios. Okay, when we start the game, we don't start with any skill cards. I just place it here for visibility purposes. Okay, we're going to earn them after we finish the first scenario. Okay, and you can see the level here also. Again, the prototype also has a level 1 skill cards, but through the campaign you're going to be getting all the way up to level 3 skill cards. Now, our first scenario is called the Dawn Patrol. Okay, and it also has the loot 1 cards in there. Loot 1 cards means that you are going to include loot cards from the loot deck is going to be specific based on the scenario. Okay, so it just indicates which loot cards you're going to be using. Now there is an introduction here which you can read, essentially giving you background about what's going on in the story, which is really nice and very thematic. But also you have the different structure here. Typically on the left side of the adventure book you have the rules for the scenario, and then the map extends either to the side, to the right side, or you can take some portion of the left side also. The instructions on how to set up the scenario and any special rules are contained on the left page typically. The map on which your heroes will traverse and complete objective is on the right side, or could be on the left side and extending to the right side also sometimes. Setting up is the same whether it's a solo or a cooperative game. The basic explanation I'm going to give you now is for the standard setup, and you can see if you have a standard setup it says here standard. Okay, if anything else is needed for your setup as an exception is going to be covered in this section under the setup box. Other than that, if it's not anything explicitly said there, then you're just going to do the standard setup. You start by choosing your heroes. Each player picks 1 or more heroes from the ones provided. You retrieve their figure and character dashboard, and the number of cats that they play in the game, the heroes, they must always be 4. So if you're playing a solo, you're going to be handling 4 heroes, which is very easy to do so, but you always need to include all 4 heroes as a total number. The ones that you choose out of the available ones, it's up to the players. If you want to play with 2 cat heroes instead, you can also do, but when playing with 2 cats, you increase the action points to 3 instead of 2, which is typical for the normal 4 cats game, which will be more challenging, and you may lose some cats along the way. So if you have a casualty when you need to choose another hero, you need to pick one from the remaining ones available from the pool, and the new hero starts at the same level of experience as the one lost, and you may choose 4 loot cards. Now let's move specifically to the scenario 1. First of all, you open the scenario book and you're placing it on the scenario that you're playing. We're going to be playing the scenario 1, the Dawn Patrol, as our initial scenario. You place your character dashboard close to the scenario book. Okay, I place it up and down and around my scenario book. And then we check the forces section, and we select the vermin markets and place them in a designated area near the map. The vermin pool, as it is called. You make sure that they are inverted, so you're not seeing what you have. And also, if a vermin name is in orange, then you do not put it in the vermin pool. Okay. So the vermin, you will not know what you have, so it's going to be like that. Okay, so that's why you need to have it face down, so you don't know until you establish line of sight, or they are spawned and you have line of sight to one of our heroes, then they are revealed. You place your hero figures on or adjacent to the square marked C. That means here, for example, you see there is a C where our heroes are starting. Okay, so I'm placing my heroes there or adjacent to this spot. For example, they can go there. Yeah. So the next thing you do is you draw and place one vermin marker from the vermin pool. Again, I haven't flipped anything face down, but you will prepare the vermin pool. Okay, here it says you have a rat army of 6 roaches to begin. Okay, and you're going to be using this as your rat army pool. Okay, if you have different mix of the pool, this is going to be covered on this section of the rulebook. Now you draw and place one vermin marker from the vermin pool face down on each of the squares marked with R. That means that, let me remove those because this was from the previous example. I would be placing here on this letter R, and here, okay, wherever there is an R, I'm going to be placing one marker from the pool. Then you place one blue objective marker on each square scenario, squared section with a 0. So see, here there is a spilled bottle with something and it has an O or 0, O, not 0. So you place one of these markers there to indicate that. You place 2 loot markers on each square marked with L, which stands for loot. So let me retrieve those. The loot markers are the ones, the blue ones. So I have an L here, this is a loot. I have an L here, which is another loot. Okay. And there is also one more. Sorry, these are the loot markers. This is the objective marker. Yeah. The objective marker is this one. Yeah. And these are the loot markers over there with the sword, as I mentioned. And you place those over there. Then you also have an O1 here for this scenario. Once you've done all that, the next step to do is you take the loot card, which is described for the scenario that we're playing, you shuffle it and you place it nearby, and then you place the round marker on the start of the round track, which is here, the first spot. This is to indicate that we're playing round 1, and you designate an area next to the scenario book as your discard area. You'll be placing markers of eliminated vermin there. Now let's see the scenario book rules layout and how this works. Basically we have, first of all, the introduction text, which is here. Okay, so this gives us an introduction to the story. Then we have the loot number. We use the loot card deck indicated here. It says the scenario is the Dawn Patrol and it says loot 1, so we're using loot 1 cards. Then we have the vermin army pool, the vermin figures that will be used for the scenario. Okay, so we make a pool in this case with 6 roaches as indicated there. Then we have the setup. If the setup for the scenario differs from the standard setup that I just described, any special rules are going to be written here. For the moment it says standard. Then you have the spawn section, which says also here standard. Spawn rules, it's rules for when rats appear spawning on the map. Standard spawn rules are the following. So when S or S1 or S2 letters appear on the round track, you draw a vermin marker from the vermin pool and place it face down on all of the squares marked with that letter. So that means here, once we go to third round, you see an S letter. That means I'm going to draw from the pool of vermin one face down, and I'm going to be placed it here. Okay, but you can also have S1 or S2 or various S squares around the map depending on the scenario. Here is an introductory scenario, that's why it's easy. Then you have objectives. The objectives are listed clearly here. Okay, for this scenario we have to complete the patrol before the rooster crows. We have to evade the roaches to avoid them. We're trying to move around, so no attacking, just moving around the scenario on. We have to investigate the spill at the square marked 0. O, which is this one. There's a spill, so we need to go there and find out what's going on. And then we need to exit the map from the square marked with the green arrow, which is there. So we need to avoid the roaches, investigate the objective, and then exit from the green arrow to the next scenario. Keep in mind that the objectives that need to be completed to finish the scenario are listed there. Unless otherwise specified, your cats must also leave the map via the square marked with the green arrow, unless something else happens or explicitly is explained. And once the green arrow is available for the players after fulfilling their objectives and the cat is there, they must spend 1 action point from there to move off the map and exit. You also have special rules here in this section. Special rules are any rules that apply to this particular scenario only. Let's read them for scenario 1. I'm not going to do for the rest. Before the rooster crows, Chanticleer the rooster wakes everyone on the island with his crowing. This happens when the round counter reaches the end of the round track over there. The game ends. If you have not exited all cats from the board by then, you will be blamed for the mess. You start from scratch and you replay the scenario. Evade the roaches, a specific rule for this scenario. If a roach marker moves under a cat figure, they will hiss, bite and release a sting cloud, making noise and attracting more of them. You need to start the scenario and replay it again because you will have lost the scenario. And the spiel. When you search the spiel square to investigate it, when you do, you read entry 1 from the book, and any roaches which enter the square marked O, they are eliminated. Okay, so this is our objective that we need to go towards. So these are the special rules. A description for the loot cards: remove all the weapons from the loot deck, so no weapons are going to be picked up from this loot. Okay, and for scenario 1 we don't start with any weapon cards, as I have placed on the weapons. It was just for explaining how the game would look like. Keep also in mind that we have this section with the exit, which is here. So something specifically may happen in the scenario other than what I just explained, but then it will be explained under the special rules. Also, there could be a theme or some fluff to get you into the explanation. So you read this section, what happens when you successfully exit, okay, to get the story going. And also there is a section with between scenarios. So each hero gets to pick one of his preferred weapons. You can find this in the loot deck 1. And then you play the next scenario 2, the Pret Au Combat, where it teaches you how to do combat. Straight, easy, and very easy to follow. So you also have the area here that I want to highlight, the round track that I explained before. This progresses with the rounds that are moving across from round to round. The round track is used to keep track of the round and which round you're playing in. You advance the marker on the round track 1 position to the right when you reach the end segment of each round. More on that in a sec. And when round track marker would move off the end of the round track, so from here move out there, that means that you have to move the round tracker back to the first space of the track. Now, for scenario 1, the scenario 1 is set up as explained. We're ready to start, so you don't need anything else to know, just to explain how the sequence of play goes. Okay, so keep in mind that various steps during the play of the scenario can tell you to read an entry. So when you go to the spiel, you read entry 1. Okay, at various points during the scenario you may be instructed to read an entry. You can find an entry at the entry section of the rulebook, and you have to read only this section and nothing else. Okay, and follow as instructed. Now, what is let's move to the sequence of play and how this goes. Sequence of play. The game is played over a series of rounds, and each round is comprised of the initiative segment, 2 turn segments, and the edge segment. So let's see the 4 segments respectively. First, we have the initiative segment. This segment determines who will take the first turn, cats or rats. You take 2 different colored dice. You roll them. You choose 1 color for the rats and 1 for the cats, and roll them together. You subtract 4 from the vermin die. Let's say this is I rolled a 9 for the cats, and let's say I rolled 12 for the rats. Once I've done that, I subtract 4 from the vermin die, so instead of 12 that will go to 8. Okay, so whichever side has the highest number will go first, will decide who will take the first turn. Okay, you may still be the first one, the highest number. Let's say the cats are higher, so they're going to go, theoretically they're going to decide if they're going to go first themselves, or allow the rats, their enemy, to for tactical reasons, to start playing first. Okay, the higher the roll gains the initiative and chooses who will take the first turn. Now, rats always choose to go first, of course. Then we move to the turn segments. Secondly, The segment is split into one cat and one vermin turn. One at a time, you activate all the figures of one side turn and repeat the other segment for the other side. Once you complete both turns, your round proceeds to the end segment step. The end segment, you advance the round one step forward, okay, and then you perform any scenario-specific tasks. For example, you could reach a spawn section when you need to spawn any new vermin. Cat actions. When the turn starts, you remove any status markers except from stun on the cats, and during your turn you will activate your cats one at a time, completing all of their actions before moving to the next cat that you choose. When each cat is activated, it may perform any number of actions up to equal or the full extent of their action points that they have available for their activation. Action points are used to perform actions during your hero turn, and while they're activated, the cats have two action points to spend. Let's see what some of their options are and the cost in action points. The cat action point cost is the following. The cats can prowl, which is a movement type, for one action point. They can stride, which is a movement type, for one action point. They can pounce, which is a movement type for two action points, spending all their action points essentially. They can search or investigate for one action point. They can pick up or reorganize items. This doesn't cost any action points. They can attack for one action point. They can pick up an item for 0 action points. They can remove stun markers for one action point. Leave them up for one action point, from the green arrow that is usually. They can reload for 2 action points or transfer an item for 1 action point. Vermin actions. During their turn, you will activate the vermin figures one at a time, starting with the ones closest to a cat. When each vermin is activated, it may perform actions equal to the action points that vermin has. In scenario 1, they are just moving. You activate the roaches one by one, starting with the one closest to a cat. Roaches will always move towards the closest cat, which is the target that they would be moved adjacent to it in the smallest number of moves. Roaches, the yellow ones, have 1 action point, and they may only move to adjacent small squares. They do not move diagonally. So the vermin action point cost is 1. You move 1 small square, no diagonals, for 1 action point. They attack for 1 action point, and they remove stun markers. This costs all their action points respectively. Moving your cat. There are 3 movement types that your cat can choose to use: prowling, striding, and pouncing. Prowling. If you choose to use the prowling movement, then your cat will move just 1 small square. You must choose prowling movement if an enemy who is not stunned is in an adjacent small square or in the same space as the cat. Diagonal movement is not allowed. So, for example, prowling could be that, or that. Okay? Also keep in mind that if you have an enemy next to you, so let's say you had an enemy, then prowling is the only movement that you can make. Because you have either next to you or on the same space an enemy that is harassing you. Again, diagonal movement is not allowed. Now, let's see how striding works. When this mode of movement is chosen, you can move your cat into any adjacent big square. I remind you that the big square is consisted of 4 small squares, 2 by 2. And when striding to a big square, then you choose any unoccupied small square in the big square your cat occupies to move into. Okay? So this needs to be from one big square, like this one, whether you're seated here, doesn't matter. Okay, so you're sitting in this, and let's say I want to move to the one below here in this big square. So when I'm striding, I can move in any of the 4 sections of the adjacent big square. Okay, so let's say I want to go there for tactical reasons. Now let's see how pouncing works. Let's say that I'm here. Okay, I'm using pouncing, and when this move is type of movement is chosen, then you can move up to 2 big squares away. Of course, this is something that takes a lot of effort, that's why it costs 2 action points, but one attack, you can attack with at the end position of the reach with range of 0. So you can move your cat into any big square which is up to 2 squares away. This costs 2 action points, but one attack with range 0 weapon may be performed at the end of this movement using normal attack rules. Diagonal movement is not allowed. And then you place a vulnerable marker on the cat which pounced. We'll explain what that means, but essentially you're exposing yourself because you put all your effort to, let's say, do the pouncing. So in this example, Leon, which is here, he can go 1 big square, 2 big square, okay, and end his movement there. This is called pouncing, and he will have a vulnerable marker because he did pouncing. Picking up items. Your cat can pick up any item in the small square they occupy for no action point cost additional other than moving. Place the item card in your loot slot or equip it to your hero. Cards may be freely reorganized any time. For transferring an item, when activating your cat, you can transfer or trade any item between cats adjacent to each other. If exchanging items with other players, these of course sides needs to agree for exchanging equipment. Reloading. All firearms and crossbow must be reloaded after they have been fired. You place a discharge token on the weapon after it has been fired and remove it once it's been reloaded, and this costs action points to reload them. Search or investigate. A cat may search or investigate a small square that they are diagonal to, or the big square that they are in, and you remove 1 loot or objective token once they search or investigate and they complete this section. Now remember, we talked about being vulnerable because you take a vulnerable marker if you pounced. A vulnerable marker, status marker, is placed on a cat which pounces, while a vulnerable marker is on a cat that has this marker. This cat is easier to be hit. You apply a +2 modifier on the attack die roll result of any vermin attack against it, and you remove the marker when you activate the cat next again. Okay, so you may move further, but you expose yourself because you stretch too much and then you become vulnerable. Yellow and red bordered squares. Squares can be found with colored edges outlined in either red or yellow throughout the scenario book and the maps. You cannot move into or through a red outlined square or section for that matter. We also have the yellow outlined squares. For this scenario 1, the first one, they have no effect, okay, so you can ignore them, but we'll cover them later when we move to scenario 2. Okay, so these are essentially areas which have hindering terrain, okay, and they affect if one is on a hindering terrain and one is on a hindering terrain and one is not on a hindering terrain, okay, and this affects tactics, of course. So another thing is the roaches. So they are servants and worshippers of l'Abbesse les Cafards, and they are the premier regiment of the vast horde of cockroaches which follow the cardinal. A ready food source and individually weak when organized, they are an unstoppable wave. So the roaches, let me show you how they look again. Okay, they have 1 health, and there is a card to indicate that, but I don't have it here in the demo copy. They have 1 health. This is the number of wounds that they need to take in order to be eliminated. They indicate on the card the action points that they have. Okay, so they can spend. Typically roaches have 1 action point, and at the bottom of the card they indicate the ability that they have. Now roaches have the stacking ability specifically. Each member of the vermin army that has a different power, okay, keep that in mind, but for the moment let's say focus on the roaches with power, which is the ability to stack. That means that they can end their move on the same small square as the vermin or cat, and there is no limit to the number of roaches they can be on a small square. and of course the more they are, the more dangerous they become. Okay, so roaches are weak. They only have one hit point and one action point, but they stack, so be aware, because they can be a problem if you get too many of them. Spawning. In this scenario one, you know that on the third run we have an S. That indicates that there's going to be spawning. New rats are spawned, placed on the map, after all vermin figures on the map have been activated, and when there is an S, or S1, or S2, or S3 on the current round track square. So when you reach the third round with the S, you will not be spawning immediately, okay? During the third round you'll have the rats activated, the vermin, and after that you'll make spawn. So when these conditions occur, you draw vermin markers from the vermin pool that you have set during setup, and you place one face down on each of the matching spawn location on the map. You may have more than one. Some scenarios will also instruct you to place a specific vermin that has been set aside during setup, the ones whose names are colored orange, like the cardinal, okay, or others, more powerful vermin. So then rather than drawing one from the pool, you place the one specified and set aside during setup on the specific square indicated. Now, the rules that apply to all vermin spawns are these. If you need to spawn a vermin and there are no markers left in the vermin pool, you take all the vermin markers in the discard pile, shuffle them, and then place them face down into the vermin pool. If none remains in the discard or pool, you skip the spawn. If a spawn location like this one is occupied by vermin or a cat, you spawn the vermin in the closest empty square. Okay, that's something which is also need to be noted. Loot cards and loot deck. As you play the game, you will search loot squares marked with an L to obtain loot cards. To search the loot squares, you spend one action point while adjacent or on it. Then you draw a card from the loot deck specified for the scenario that you're playing, and you remove one loot marker. The loot deck could contain weapon, armor, or other useful item or event cards. Each cat may search each loot square only once. Rules for how you use each item, like armor or weapon, are described typically on the card. So when you pick up a loot card, either place it to your weapon or armor slot, or onto the loot space of your character sheet for later use. Unless specified, there is no action point cost to use a non-weapon loot card. And during setup, the loot deck is constructed with the following rules. Loot cards that are on different levels only use the loot cards listed for the scenario. This list is beside the name of the scenario. For scenario 1, it's number 1, as I've shown you before, and you shuffle the remaining cards together to form the loot deck. Okay, so here's an example. So we have weapon cards. These are weapon cards which have statistics. But for scenario 1, we don't focus on that because I'm going to explain them later on. You don't need it for scenario 1. You can have armor cards that they go into your loot slot or your armor slot. Okay. For example, you can place it here. It gives -1 to all attacks against the hero, so it's protection. It could be some kind of potion, so you discard it to heal 1 wound. Or it could be maybe an event. That can happen. In any case, you have various possibilities, and that's why you need to focus on loot and gaining more equipment and upgrading and becoming better. Now, scratch rule. The scratch rule focuses on this token. So if you roll a 1 for the cats, you may, it's a bad poor roll, obviously, you may either take or use 1 scratch token. If your team does not have already 3 scratch tokens, then when the 1 is rolled, you may take 1 from the discarded area. Or if the team has any scratch tokens, you may discard 1 at any time to reroll a die scratch, a die. Okay, so you get a better roll. Scratch tokens are not assigned to a specific hero, so they are set for a pool for all heroes to use. And keep in mind that you don't take them on your player board, okay? So you can just place them for the party so that you know that you have them, and the maximum number of scratch tokens the party can have is a total of 3. You cannot have more than 3 for the whole group. Now, these are all the rules you need to play scenario 1. You will be able to just go ahead and try it. Once you finish scenario 1, you will have escaped the skittering roaches, so you will move to scenario 2, which is Pret Au Combat, where you'll learn how to do combat. If you failed, or if you want to play again scenario 1, of course you can do so at no cost or no problem for your campaign. Now, scenario 2 is called Pret Au Combat, and it's a scenario where players are going to be introduced with the basics of combat. Now things start getting more interesting, as you can see. Our heroes are entering this area here, and there are already some enemies there. Keep in mind that you're again going to see the rat pool. This is different, so you have one Norwegian brown rat which is set aside, and it's going to spawn when the marker reaches N, on the N spot over here. Then you have one Arbaletrier, one Detestable, and 7 roaches, which make the vermin pool. I'm not making any vermin pool, but they're going to be a pile of tokens with the question mark. Okay, so for the sake of explanation to move faster. Now, something introduced in this scenario is the terrain. There are 2 markings on the map that will affect movement or combat. These are hindering terrain, bordered with yellow outline, and blocking terrain, bordered with red outline. The blocking terrain, like for example this one, or this one, the chimney of the stove, you cannot move or attack through blocking terrain, like closed doors, walls, or any other item outlined in red. All figures except roaches are also considered blocking terrain. If a figure line of sight, covered later, we're going to explain how line of sight works, passes through squares with blocking terrain, its line of sight is blocked and figures cannot see the target to reveal or attack it. The hindering terrain, which is something else, it's the yellow one, like this one. Okay, and in this scenario these are on the side, but imagine you had a hindering terrain in the center. Any attacks into or through a square outlined in yellow gets -2 to the result of the attack die roll. So it's like something which makes it more difficult, like an obstacle or something, and it's called hindering terrain. If the attacker is also in hindering terrain, then you do not apply the -2 modifier for the terrain in the small square they're in. Okay. Now, since we covered that, let's talk about line of sight, LOS. To determine line of sight, you trace a straight line from any corner of the small square the attacker occupies to any corner to the small squares the potential target occupies. Any squares or linear features such as a wall the line passes through is considered when checking if LOS exists between the 2 figures. You use a line of sight when you're revealing or attacking rats. Remember, when you spawn, if it is not visible by means of line of sight, as we explained, then you're not going to reveal it, you're just going to have it as a face down question mark from the vermin pool. But if it is within line of sight, you're going to automatically reveal it. Rats also use this rule when attacking our heroes. An attacker can only target something if they have a line of sight to it. The line of sight is blocked by blocking terrain, closed doors, squares outlined in red, etc. And if a line of sight only touches a corner of a square, that square is considered when checking line of sight. Furthermore, if the attack passes through a yellow line or into or through a yellow border square, then the attack suffers a -2 modifier to the attack die roll. It does not block line of sight, so yellow squared hindering terrain do not block line of sight, but they have the -2 modifier. The maximum modifier is -2 regardless of how many yellow lines the line of sight passes through. Okay, so it's not accumulative, -2 for each yellow line the line of sight crosses through. So, from a square, okay, you take from any corner of the square, if it goes to any corner of the target, okay, it has line of sight, obviously, and you can of course shoot if you have ranged attack, or reveal it if it is unrevealed. But let's say for the sake of this example, you have this area which is red blocking, okay, and this is hinder terrain, yellow. So if I'm like that, I cannot see across this red border, because even if this square goes through there, okay, it's touching the red blocking terrain. That means that I cannot see this or that due to this high, let's say, wall which is between them. Okay, so this is how line of sight works. Pretty straightforward and very, very interesting for tactical choices. Now, revealing vermin. Vermin markers start on the map with their question mark side up and they are flipped, revealed to the specific vermin as soon as they are in line of sight of a hero, as I said. This is done immediately regardless of when it occurs, during a spawning or a cut movement or a scenario effect. When revealed, you replace the marker with a standee of the appropriate miniature if you have them, or if not, you just keep the marker there to indicate the vermin in play. The vermin in play area is where you place a vermin's marker when it is replaced by a miniature or standee. This occurs when revealing a vermin. Okay, so this is important. Now, pretty straightforward line of sight. So this would not be revealed. So for the sake of example, if we are like that, this would be non-revealed, and this would be revealed. Okay, or this would also be not revealed. Would be like that because of the line of sight. But when we move further, okay, and this is going to be revealed, but let's say we move further, and this reaches here, and then maybe another reaches there, okay, another one comes, I don't know, here. All of these are going to be removed, then going to be placed to the side, not together with the rest of the pool. This is the vermin in play, so you know that they're in play, and you're going to replace them with roaches, standees, or miniatures if you have the miniatures, or the standees respectively. Okay, so this is how you do this in practice. Right. Weapon loot cards. Now, here's an example of a weapon loot card. So maybe players need to take a moment to familiarize themselves with the anatomy and how they look. We'll explain how attack works later on, but for the moment focus on this area here with the 25. This is the price, the purchase price for this weapon at the tavern. Here is the attack dice, the number of attack dice you roll when you attack with this weapon. This is 1 for this case, for this musket. This is the hands to use, indicates if a weapon is 1 or 2-handed. This is a stun, the range of numbers you must roll on the attack die to inflict a stun. So if you roll a 6, 7 or 8, you place a stun marker on the enemy. This is the damage, the roll result you must equal or exceed in order to inflict a stun and a wound to the target. This is the distance, the range of the weapon in big squares, again big squares, 2 by 2, not small squares. And here are any special rules that you may find. For example, always runs out of ammo, wounds friends in same large square as target on attacked roll of 2 or 3. Okay, so you need to be careful for collateral damage. So different weapons have different abilities and statistics, and you need to take the best advantage of them during your attack. Cut attack. While a cut is activated, our heroes that is, they may use 1 or more action points to perform an attack action. When using an attack action, a hero must pick a target which the cat has a line of sight to and within range of a weapon they can be using. So if you're using a weapon with range 2 in order to attack with a musket, for example, let's say guy wants to attack to the Norwegian brown, okay, they need to be within 2 large squares and have line of sight. So 1, 2, they could attack the Norwegian brown because by using their musket, because it has a range of 2 and they also have clear line of sight to them. Also keep in mind that you roll the attack dice as indicated on your weapon card, 1, 2 or anything else noted. Then you add any attack modifiers, you determine if a hit was scored, and you apply stuns and wounds to the target if a hit is scored. How you count range. When performing an attack, determine the range by counting the number of big squares from the attacking figure to the target figure, including the target square but not the attacking figure square. When calculating range, do not use diagonal squares. So range 0 means that the target is either in an adjacent small square or anywhere in the big square the attacker occupies. Range 1 means that the target is anywhere on the big square the attacker occupies or on an adjacent big square. And range 2 means that the target is on 1 or 2 big squares away from the attacker shown close to them. A ranged 2 weapon cannot attack a target in its own big square. Okay, so if the Norwegian was here, it cannot, a weapon with range 2, it cannot attack within the same big square. Okay, so keep that in mind. But this is 1, 2 range. Okay, this area here, all of those 4 squares, is 1 range, and so on. So you roll the attack die. Okay, and depending on the number and your weapon, you'll see, and the modifiers, if you are scoring a hit. This could be 1 or 2 depending on the weapon of choice that you're using. You add the attack modifier, you add or subtract attack modifiers. For example, if it's across hindering terrain, it's -2, okay, etc, etc. And then you inflict the hit, if any. Now, attack modifiers. Various factors may make it harder or easier to hit your target. This could include the type of attack conducted, the target's status, or perhaps an attacker is attacking through hindering terrain, yellow borders. These circumstances create an attack modifier which can be applied to your attack die roll result to give you a final attack die roll. Modifiers are added or subtracted from the result rolled on each attack die. Modifiers are cumulative. A figure in hindering terrain does not apply any attack modifier for the square they are attacking from. A natural roll of 1 is a miss regarding of any modifiers, so you don't want the ones, but you're taking 1 scratch token as indicated before. So let's see the attack modifiers. Stunned vermin +3 attack modifier. Hindering terrain includes figures -2. Vermin attacking a vulnerable cat because of pouncing +2. And skill on weapon, this can vary depending on the skill or the weapon that you're using. The attack results. If any of the attack die numbers are equal to or more than the weapon's stand value, in this case 6 or 8 if I'm attacking with this musket, that means that the target is stunned. Each number equal to or more than the weapon's wound value, which is this one, 9+ on the 12-sided die, that means that it creates a wound, dealing 1 wound to the target as well as stunning it. For each wound the target has received, you reduce the target's health by 1. If a vermin health is reduced to 0, then it's eliminated from the map and its marker is placed in the vermin discarded area. Otherwise, you track the damage by placing wound markers on the vermin. If a vermin is stunned, you place a black stun marker beside it, and you note that a roll that causes a wound will also stun the vermin, if it has not already been eliminated for the round. Further stun results against the stun vermin have no effect, so just 1 stun marker. And roach markers are removed from the map and placed in the vermin discard pile if they're stunned. With 1 stun it's enough to remove them from the area of play. Now there could be that you have some area of effect attacks, AoE, a weapon or skill which has an area of effect attack. Attacks all figures in the targeted big square. You roll an attack against each figure. Figures may not dodge this attack. This is something that they cannot avoid. So depending on the scenario, the weapons, the options, the decisions, the selections, you may have all sorts of different situations depending on what is going on, and this is a part of the tactical beauty of the game on how to attack and best take advantage of your attacks. I want to highlight that you have different types of foes. As you can see, they have their own cards, their own statistics, their own different health. For example, the Norwegian brown rats, they have 2 action points, whether the others have 1. They have different amount of action points. These brutes have 2 action points. And have special abilities that they may take place. So this makes for interesting choices and adds a lot of value in the attack and pursuit of the scenario from the players. Now, the vermin attack. As noted from the first scenario, during the vermin turn, they will activate 1 at a time, starting with the one closest to a cat. When each vermin is activated, it may perform any number of actions equal to the action points that vermin has in the following order. First, the vermin, if he has a target in the range and in line of sight, they will attack immediately. Secondly, if one is not the case, the previous step, it will move towards the closest cat. And then thirdly, you repeat the previous steps, 1 and 2, if the vermin has remaining action points, moving and attacking as needed. Unless otherwise specified, vermin attacks cause 1 stun or wound and a wound stands as well, same like with the cats versus the vermin. The vermin elimination. When vermin are eliminated, you remove the marker or miniature standee from the map and place it into the vermin discard pile beside your play area. They will be returned to the vermin pool when the vermin pool is empty. Roaches, though, besides grows, they're different. Roaches move the same as rats and use their action point the same, but their attack in effect is different. A roach only attacks a cat that occupies the same small space with it. If roach activates while in the same small square as the cat, it inflicts one wound to the cat and then is removed from the map and placed in the vermin discard pile. Okay, so they attack and then they destroy themselves essentially. Now this is all you need to know in order how to play scenario 2. Once you have completed the goal, just to let you know in this scenario so that you get more of a bit of thematic understanding without again making spoilers, you have you know, a lot of vermin attacking you. You have to go for the objective, and then you have to place and close one of these D sections, the D spots, to add objective markers on them so that they have no further spawns, okay, and they are closed and eliminated to seal them off essentially. Again, after each scenario, which I haven't covered from scenario 1 to scenario 2, you visit the Tavern du Pelican de Mer, okay, which is let's say the regroup phase. Just to show you a glance on the scenario 3 and what happens with the story of our heroes. So you'll be continuing the story through scenario 3 with Madame Antoinette's fate. Okay, so you see the docks here and the vessel ready to sail out. So the story moves on there, and it's a very, very interesting story. And you will be reading various entries again from the entry section of the book, again not to make any spoilers, which they will be giving you story and narrative theme and to the game. And once you finish that, then you will be moving to the tavern phase. So let's focus on the tavern phase, which also there is a visual depiction of the tavern over here, the Tavern du Pelican de Mer, as you can see here. So between scenarios, your cats will rest and visit the Tavern du Pelican de Mer, and there you can listen to rumors and gossip, you can heal your wounds, and you can purchase gear. So let's see first the gossip and rumors. After each scenario, the first thing to do is visit the tavern and roll the events chart to see where there is anything particularly interesting happening. There are 7 listings on the 20 available that are coming in the final game. It's recommended that you only read the event that it's rolled and keep the others secret. And in the final game, the events involve side scenarios, games of chance, but for now let's keep it simple, and let's say you just roll 1d12, and if for example you rolled 7 to 8, you can have, spoiler, but anyway, supply and demand, another boat run around the evening, and it's bringing more loot and items. So you have the big gas, and friends there can have a surplus of very similar items that you can get, so you can buy their loot for half the price rounded up, so make it more favorable to gain loot from what is offered. The second thing that happens is the bees heal your wounds. You can spend any amount of your healing salves to heal your wounds, up to a maximum of 9 for each hero. And the third thing that happens is you purchase gear. You may purchase and sell your gear to gas when at the tavern. You draw 5 cards from the loot decks used from the last scenario. You set aside any non-item cards and continue to draw from the loot deck until there is a total of 5 cards. These are the items that are available for you to purchase. You may also sell any extra gear you have for 10 times the loot level. So for example, level 1 gear can be sold for 10 francs each. And this way you can acquire more equipment if you didn't acquire during the course of the scenario. Now, once you've done that, then you proceed according to the instructions to the next scenario. Also, just to indicate that our heroes come with various backgrounds, with weapon of choice, with different quotes and story background, and this is also included in the rulebook. Okay, so this is for the 4 heroes that we have in the demo copy, but they will be for all the heroes included in the game, and this gives more value also. And as I mentioned, the end of the rulebook has the different entries where you see the different information that you can find in the course of the story and the decisions. So there's going to be various number of entries based on the progression once you have more scenarios, and this can branch off and have side quests also, etc., based on the decision, because each end of the scenario will affect the start of the next one. So this makes it really interesting. So without further ado, there you have it. These are all the components and all the game rules on how to play the game. A clever, interesting, tactical, accessible and fun game. So there you have it. This is everything you need to know on what is the cats of Mont and Michel. So join me back up for my final impressions from the first 3 scenarios I had from the game and what I think about the game so far. So there you have it. This is everything you need to know on how to play the game. First impressions, thus. The first impressions for the game are very positive. Even though I played only the first 3 scenarios, which their basic purpose is to try to deck you from the hand and teach you how to move your cats around, how to make attacks on the vermin, on the roaches and the different vicious rats, and also how to pursue objectives on the area on the scenario map, to trying to activate things so that you can safely execute what you're supposed to do, find out more about the story, progress it, and then move out of the exit to the next scene, to the next scenario. This is very straightforward in terms of system. It has, though, a lot of tactical options. The rule set is simple because moving attacking is very simple. It's done through basic concepts, as I have explained through the course of this explanatory video, but the tactical options, how to move, which hero to move where, when to attack, with what weapons to attack, which placing of your heroes in order to gain more better vantage point from line of sight versus protecting yourself or being able to move more flexible around the area, and so on. There's a lot of depth in the game, that's what I'm trying to say, not through complex rules, but through simple choices, gameplay itself, and tactical decisions. The theme is really nice, the scenery is really nice, it brings a strong Mice and Mystic vibe to it. I say that because I like Mice and Mystics, but I think Mice and Mystics has less tactical aspects compared to this one. So I really like this because it's very different. It has much more tactics involved. There's a nice story progressing. There is a lot of nice visual arts and components, and everything seems to pop up as you move from scenario to scenario, and it really delivers the feeling of progressing through a story. This could easily be an animated story or a movie, taking our heroes, our cat heroes, from step 1 to through the course of the campaign to the end conclusion. So overall, very impressed from the gameplay itself, from the story, from the looks, from the system, which I was sure I was going to like it because I really loved the previous game, more complex and more tactical and more heavy, I should say, with more details than this one. But this is, I think, is intended for a more broader range of people, making it more accessible. I can easily throw this on the table and enjoy it both with gamers and non-gamers, with mixed ages, with younger players, with kids, with anyone, and since it's a co-op game, to enjoy the ride. Again, one of the huge pros of this game is how compact it is. The fact that you have the mission book really brings a lot on the table, because it gives you a ton of scenarios, and if you've seen the previous game of Raybox games, they have a lot of material and a lot of value in the box. Even though everything is very compact, great quality. I'm sure of the quality, even though this is a prototype and I've just scratched the edge, the surface, just some components to show to the reviewers how to play the game. I've seen their production value and what they've done with the previous game, and I have no doubt that it's going to be the same, if not even better. It was a great production value, the previous system and the previous game, and I expect the same here. Now, what I want to see more is I want to find out more about the story, and for me to find out more about the story, that means that the game needs to be funded, which I'm sure it's going to be funded because it's a fantastic game system, and delivered as soon as possible, which I think the company also has a very good record, so that you can write the story and enjoy the outcome of the campaign. That being said, again, I think that the game and the campaign can be played numerous times. like any type of these games, because the choices you make may have a different ending or a different branching of the story, but also the scenario. If you zoom into the scenario and the scenario on its own, how you play the scenario, which choices you make, which selection of options and skills you have, and heroes, and different positioning, and how you move around on the map, may have or may not have a different experience and result. So this is to say that this is not a campaign that I can see playing only once. You can play it more than once. Of course you will know or remember things from the story, but I think the gameplay of the scenario itself, the tactical reward on the gaming experience is enough to justify playing the campaign again and again, or specific scenarios again and again. Now, that being said, there's much more to be discovered. I'm going to urge you to follow the link in the description of the video so that you can find out more about the game once the campaign launches. It's going to be any time now soon. So I hope I gave you a very good understanding of the game system, what they're trying to do with this, if this is a game for you and your gaming group and the people you play games with, or if it's not. I think it's a game that they really has a lot to offer. I highly recommend it. I'm sure I'm going to enjoy it the same, if not even more, from their previous game, and it's going to see a lot of table time, a lot of playing, because it's very easy to get on the table, very accessible. You can even, since you're playing all 4 characters, you can have people jumping in or out from the campaign very easily. So that's another plus that I failed to mention. Sometimes with complex campaign games, when you have to have dedicated groups, so it goes from all the way from the beginning to the end. Here you can just play solo one scenario and then meet your friends or your gaming group and play the next scenario and just inform them what happened on the story and progress, and then again solo another scenario and so on. So that makes it a very, very valuable game system on its own as a system, and a game title, a game box on its own. So hope you enjoyed this video. Until the next time, don't forget to play board games, and many thanks for watching.